where my life is if I was really married to that idea, I'm a coach.
What is masculinity for you?
So for me, masculinity is an energy. I don't think anybody is perfect and nobody's going to get there. Why we are where we are. Overweight, sick, obese.
It's happening, and it's regardless of whether I'm there or not, whether I'm fixing it or not. It's going to happen, and it's going to resolve somehow.
And you understand that everything is happening for you. Nothing is happening to you. You go, all of a sudden you're like, whoa, I haven't been breathing for a while. So why am I doing this to myself?
Welcome, Arsalan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm very excited to have you and to have this nice topic to talk about. And as we've already discussed it, I think it was I find it very urgent and important topic to talk about, because we, in the last few decades, we're very much focusing on women and women empowerment. So men are a bit, left aside. So tell us about you. Tell me more about what you do and what you're specialized in and why you started what you started.
I am a human optimization expert, and I define that by working with my clients to help them reach their highest levels of performance. And I also assist them long-term on reaching whatever goals they've come to see me for, with the caveat of trying to eradicate or at least mitigate chronic stress, because that's kind of the background that I come from. And it's evolved along the years. I used to be a chronic stress specialist, and along my own journey, recovering from chronic stress and chronic fatigue syndrome, stage 3, and all of these things that I got diagnosed with, it's changed into human optimization because it is a lot more of a kind of positive approach towards joy, and having joy in your life, which is a tool that you can use to optimize your life as a totality. We're talking about career and stuff like that. So I work with high performers, high achievers, high net worth individuals, members of the royal family, professional athletes, and sometimes people from all walks of life that actually want to reach their full potential.
I wanted to ask you about that. Can we dive in a little bit more into the chronic stress? And can you tell me more about it? How were you diagnosed? How did you realize that it's happening? And what were the red flags that...
Oh, that just gave me goosebumps. Look, I speak about high performance and optimization because I've been seeking that my whole life. As a child, by the age of 12, I was already a professional athlete. I had the kind of father, typical Arabic kind of background where if you go to school, 98% to 99% is not accepted. The question was always, where's the 1% gone?
Yeah.
Very comparative to other people, very strict. And so I've always been pushed to be a high achiever and a high performer in everything I've ever done. And so there were many red flags, I would say, starting with, all the kind of athletic surgeries I had. I had 3 knee surgeries, 2 leg surgeries, 1 shoulder surgery, 1 broken nose surgery, all from all of these, like me pushing myself beyond, now understanding, me pushing myself beyond levels that I should have been very aware of. That's on the athletic side, but I also had a very, very illustrious career. I was in the government. I was a senior advisor in the government by the age of 28. I was a general manager of a multinational, international company. I managed all of their business in the Middle East after my government stint for about 15 years. And then I quit everything and I dedicated my life to Ironman for about 5 years. So all throughout this whole, I also was an entrepreneur and a father and a husband. So as you can imagine, there were so many factors that were causing stress in my life. And because I was programmed to be the kind of person that doesn't see hurdles as an opportunity for growth, and actually jumping over them and trying to find solutions and jump over and jump over. So throughout my life, I've had a lot of red flags, whether it was, when I was an athlete, as I was younger, or when I started my career and how my career progressed. And I can tell you a million stories, but I think the main one would probably be the last race, the last Ironman race I did, where I completely hit rock bottom. That was the worst one. And the funny thing was, I was already coaching by then. And I was coaching using the first method I developed. At that point, it was called the 5 Pillars of Life Mastery. Now it's called the 10 Pillars of Life Mastery, for the journey that happened after the breakdown. But at that point, I felt like I was completely optimized. My food was dialed in. I was like a machine, literally. My food was dialed in. My sleep was dialed in. I used to sleep every day at 9 o'clock and wake up at 4:30 to be in Al Qudra, like cycling and getting ready to train by 5 a.m. Because we have to train this way here because of the heat.
Yeah.
Everything was dialed in. The way I was exercising, the way I was moving, and I did that for about 5 years while learning, nutrition, while learning coaching, while learning all of these things to kind of just push myself to be as good as I can be in the least amount of time. And what ended up happening in the last race was I completely hit rock bottom. And not only did that kind of completely affect me mentally, physically, but it also really hurt my ego because I thought that at that point, after developing this method for about 10 years, that I would be absolutely superhuman. Literally, in my mind, that's what I was thinking. And it was a very big learning moment. I mean, it took about 2 years to really to really recover. Really, it took about 2 years to fully recover. I'm still not fully recovered, physically mostly, and of course, a lot of mentally and mindset things that have changed and evolved. I don't think anybody is perfect, and nobody's going to get there. I am after that pursuit. It's part of my personality, but with being a lot more empathetic with myself, I think.
So what you're saying, you were living a dream, and like people were like, I think a lot of people are actually trying to get there where you were, and you're telling me that's not. That wasn't something that was making you happy, or it was making you happy at that point of time, but you were trying to raise something that was not even achievable, right?
Yes, that's a very important word, achievable. So what I do, or the way I used to talk about what I do is I turn high achievers to high performers, right? Because what I realized through my own journey is that a lot of the chronic stress that high achievers feel is because their self-worth is attached to their achievements.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is if you think I want to achieve this at all cost, right? You're not understanding what the cost is going to be. And at some point, something within you is going to make you aware, very rudely. Call it a rude awakening. And to me, it was my body to just completely shut down. I mean, when I say I shut down, I shut down. Like my adrenal glands completely shut down. My testosterone levels were rock bottom. My DHEA levels were rock bottom. And a lot more. And from a male perspective, this is life. This is the serum kind of life for you to be the best version of yourself. And I definitely wasn't at the point of that complete breakdown.
You could not. Could you recognize it before it happened, or were you told that it's happening and you were not recognizing it? Were you fighting recognizing it, or were you in denial?
That's a very good question. And I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't know how to answer that question. I'm sure that there were a lot of signs along the way, like injuries or
Yeah.
fatigue. I identify the signs now in the athletes I train and the corporate people I train and senior leadership that I work with. I recognize the symptoms now very quickly before they do. But at that point, if you're asking that question, I'm not sure I was fully conscious of it. No. I told you, it's my programming.
You were
That-
pushing yourself even more than you were able to do just
Yeah.
because you're a man
Yes.
and you're meant
No
to.
weakness.
No, yeah, weakness is
No
is
weakness.
not
I come
allowed.
from, I mean, I'm 45 years old. I come from a very old school way of thinking when it comes to athletics. And by far, what has formed my perception of achievement and of success and of performance is my early years doing athletics and playing sports. I played squash, which is the number one, arguably the number one calorie spending sport in the world per minute. So in terms of achieving in a very, very high octane kind of sport, in those days there was no massage and relaxation and spirituality and visualization and meditation and eating healthy and all of that stuff. Even at that point, even eating healthy was completely a misconception of what healthy is in those days. So funny things like my coach. If I used to tell my first coach, who's very, very old school, he's from Pakistan, so he's from a lineage of world champions, like very well bred squash players, but they're very old school. And if I would tell him, for example, I need to go lift weights, he would tell me no, because that would ruin your speed and your flexibility. Some of it was true, but in the modern world, if you go tell an athlete you shouldn't lift weights, they'll think you're crazy, right? Because it protects you from, it has its place in the gamut. So, that has changed over time. And I had to, when I hit rock bottom and I had my rude awakening, that's when I started realizing, okay, there's something subconsciously at work here that is throwing me off. Later on, understanding that was actually what you were talking about. That was the internal communication I was not listening to, and I was ignoring, like the little child screaming. You need to change. You need to something, and if you don't listen, we're gonna give you a cold, and then it progresses to pneumonia, and then it progresses to, God forbid, other forms of either diseases or injuries or whatever it is.
Since you're not able to tell me like if you could recognize it or not in yourself, so my question would be, what would you now, knowing what you know now, what would you advise people that are going through similar situation but they don't know, right? We take pride in being overachievers and over performance and all this over and better and never enough. What would you advise people what to look for when because we may not know, we may not be aware that it's happening to us until something happens. Like that's an extreme thing that happens and then you realize it. But what would you advise for people who are actually going through it now, but they don't know what to look for?
The most important thing is to understand that I completely understand reaching goals. I'm not saying you don't have to reach your goals. The key is how can you reach there with as much sustainability as you can so that you don't have these ups and downs of, really good moments, really low moments, really good moments, really low moments, and try to balance out that graph into something a little bit more balanced that's not so spiky up and down, but progressively. This is what the main method I work with now is called the ascension method. That's what it's about. How do you ascend to the goal that you want to ascend to without having these dips of highs and lows and being completely sustainable and resilient? And that takes an understand. And within this, there's the 10 pillars of life mastery, which is within the ascension method, which is an understanding of how you can have a balanced life. So maybe have a 7 or 8 out of 10 in every single pillar of these 10 pillars, rather than have a 12 out of 10 in your career or in athletics or in whatever that is, and then a 2 out of 10 in your relationships, or a 3 out of 10 in environment, or a 0 out of 10 in spirituality. And I feel like this balance between these 10 pillars of life mastery and understanding that for sustainability, there are a lot of pillars in your life that you need to address and be consciously aware of. That's the most important thing, for you to be able to have that resilience and sustainability in achieving your goals.
So what I'm hearing, you have to, when something goes off balance, which we tend to, when we're focused on our career, we tend to neglect everything else. When we focused on our, whatever love life, we tend to neglect everything else at that point of time till, we get used to this, whatever is happening at that point of time. Would you say that having imbalance in in some areas of your life could be perceived as there is something needs fixing?
Absolutely. Yes, that's what I'm saying. If you can imagine, if I would talk about this from a visual perspective, when you're moving forward towards your goal, if there are certain aspects or elements in your life that you're not addressing, and this could be anything, it could be your marriage, your children, from a relationship perspective, how you eat, how you move, how you pray, how you connect, all of these things. If all of these things are not addressed consciously, then it's almost like you're having hooks attached to you from the back that are preventing you, and that makes your mission moving forward up this hill of achievement much harder. And eventually you are going to fatigue, because you're not just moving up, you're literally going up this hill with a backpack of stuff, and you're struggling to go up. On the opposite side, if you're addressing these things and being very conscious of it, what you're doing is you're kind of taking, these big rocks off of your bag, and your climb, your ascent becomes much smoother, much more sustainable.
It might not be as fast, though.
It might not be as fast,
And that's
or it
something to
could
keep
be
in mind. It could be faster.
Yeah, it depends. It depends on what you're trying to achieve and this is when I am absolutely goal oriented too, There's this misconception, I think mostly in the spiritual world, that, that doesn't appeal to high performers and high achievers. And I feel like that's why a lot of men don't want to listen to this stuff, because we're all about achievement. We're all about breaking through barriers. And I respect that. I'm like that. I'm the full representation of that, right? To an extreme. The issue is that, and we touched upon this before, is that if you're married to this goal as your definition, or as your sense of achievement, or sense of self-worth, that is where the problem is. It's not the problem of having goals. So yes, you have to have a 1-year goal, short-term goal, long-term goals, divided up to little pieces and packages, and celebrate every single win. Absolutely. But if you don't get that win, that's what defines really high performers for non-high performers. And also, at the end of the day, I mean, look at how many Olympians and tennis champions and, high net worth individuals and are now speaking out about depression and how they've been dealing with all of this stuff until the climb. And, at the end of the day, is it really worth it? That's the question I have to myself. Is it really worth it to achieve these goals at a point where everything else is struggling? Your health, your relationships, your marriage, all of these things. I'm not judging. That's the question I'm asking. And the kind of people I work with at the kind of level they're at are people that have come to the point where they realize, maybe, just maybe, now that I have this achievement, it's not worth it. Why? Because they get to the point where they realize that they've been promised joy for such a long time, attached to their achievements, and now all of a sudden they're at the top of the hill and they're exhausted. They don't know themselves. They've been wearing masks their whole lives, which applies to their parenting, to their families, to their marriage, all of that. That doesn't work for them anymore, and they're not authentic. They don't feel themselves. They don't even know who they are. But they have the Ferrari, they have the house, they have all of that stuff, and they can't even sit for a moment and enjoy that because everything else is falling apart.
It's some sort of obsession, right? It's being obsessed with the goal. That's it's not bad to have goals. It's like we're all for it, but then it's obsession that comes with having this goal is where it's tricky.
Yes.
Because then you are obsessed and you cannot see anything else except the goal.
Yes.
And that's when success, sometimes it's worrying and scary at the same
Yeah.
time. And we had this discussion before, because it's what comes with the success, the way we define it, and how everything else just goes on the, happening behind the scenes that we don't notice. And
Yes.
we don't have time to notice, because we only have 24 hours a day. So
Yeah.
there is no time for anything, and the day starts and ends, and you don't know what you've done in it.
Yeah.
What you have done joyful in it.
Yes.
And how do you now find joy in things that you do? How did you go from this, like high achieving obsession kind of thing, into now trying to enjoy life?
You know how this is what's coming to me. You know how they say time is just a figment of your imagination, like a part of your imagination. And I think what I'm starting to notice is the more I'm conscious of this moment, and kind of like putting all my focus on this moment, whether I'm parenting, whether I'm with my child, or I'm with my wife, or I'm with my clients, or whatever it is. Even when I'm driving, I don't listen to music anymore when I'm driving. I don't do anything when I'm driving. I'm just driving, right? The more I am conscious, the more time seems to expand. You know, this whole 24, we only have 24. I don't feel that anymore at all. Time is expanding at a crazy rate. And as soon as I get into my stressed mode, of course I do, I feel like time is moving really quickly. And this relationship and this like very close observation of time is giving me a lot more joy in my life, because I used to stress about not being able to be with my daughter, for example, too much,
Mm-hmm.
or I know a lot of people do that, or not give my wife the time she needs, or whatever it is. I used to stress about these things so much. But then I realized that time is only in my imagination, and it's only my relationship with time or with anything else that needs to change. And so when I'm with my daughter, I'm with my daughter. Everything goes off, nothing is on. I falter, of course, from time and again, but mostly I'll try to be very conscious about being very conscious
Mm-hmm.
of what I'm doing. And that has kind of opened the door of joy for me again, because also when you're very conscious, you start becoming very aware of why you're doing things. And are you doing them because you're enjoying it or not? Or are you doing it because you feel like you have to? And how can you change this have to want to is also a strategy that's very important for you to bring joy in your life. Yeah, so that's one of the things. So I can talk about joy for days, so don't get me started on that.
Do you use any tools to get you into this, conscious state of
Yeah,
mind?
absolutely.
What are
Yeah.
the tools?
I'm very conscious of my breath,
Okay.
very conscious of my breath. I am a breathwork coach, so that's one of the things I use with my clients. I'm a meditation coach. I do a lot of these things. But I think the most thing that I understood very quickly about myself is that whenever my breath changes from deep to shallow, slow to quick, I correlate it to how stressed I am, or how stressed I am about the situation. And if I'm very in touch with that all the time, I have a direct link between how I'm feeling before I even have to assess how I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Before I have to sit and ask myself, so how are you feeling about this situation? Because that's how it started, right? And now my relationship with my breath explains to me how I am, whether I am conscious or unconscious. So I used to suffer from road rage. Everybody that knows me will tell you this guy, no, like extreme road rage, okay? And so one of the things I realized is I am in the extreme side of unconsciousness when I'm driving.
Yeah.
I did a lot of deep work on it. And what came out was because my dad was like, had a lot of road rage. And the moment I remembered that made me change everything was I remembered one day my dad having a road rage episode. And I was sitting in the back as a child, extremely terrified. Not from the situation, terrified of him. And so when I remembered that, it made me very conscious of how I'm being with my daughter. But then that also was an extension of how I'm being with my inner child. And when I put those together, I was like, I need to be a lot more conscious. That's why I stopped listening to music. One of the things I realized is that when I'm in the car, I listen to really angry music, really angry music. Like I started listening to the lyrics and stuff that I'm unconsciously listening to. And I was like, this is not helping my psyche when I'm driving. And so it all started unraveling. The more you start being conscious of the situation that you're having a negative reaction to, the more things come to you naturally from somewhere from inside of you. You start paying attention to these things. And, you know, I am unfortunately going to use this word, but I'm obsessive about being conscious. Sometimes bad things come out of that or negative things come out of that. And I had to go through this journey of being extremely conscious and extremely obsessive about being conscious until I got to the point where I realized, okay, I need to relax with this a little bit and, flow in and out of it. Yeah, but the breath, absolutely, for me, is the more I started really practicing breath work and understanding it physiologically, mentally, spiritually, that I started connecting my well-being and how I'm feeling throughout the day to that.
I can very much relate to your road rage, and that's something that I probably should work on because everybody who knows me doesn't want to get in the car with me.
Yeah.
Everybody who have seen me driving once, they're like, okay, no, thank you, we'll take a taxi,
Yeah.
including my husband and
Okay.
kids.
Okay.
So yeah, I can
I'll
absolutely
remember
relate to that.
Please don't drive me anywhere.
I'm fine. See, I'm never gonna admit that it's bad, but I think I have that a lot as well. And you're right. It's when I remember about it, it's the way my dad drives. And now as an adult, I don't want to get in the car with him either, because it makes me so stressed about how he drives, and like the whole like behavior around driving is just stress. And yeah, maybe it's music and it's the thoughts. It's just the time. It's also a place to meditate for me, the car. Like, when I'm driving, I kind of like, if I don't have music on, I just like, that's another thing. Like when you don't have music on, the thoughts are too loud. So that's why maybe we have the loud music on.
Absolutely, yes.
To shut all this down.
Yes.
And then you are unconsciously just doing all this stuff, and you're getting annoyed when people are, cutting you or anything is happening on the road. So it's more of a reactive behavior.
I mean, that applies to everything. Whenever the voice in your head gets loud, instead of listening to it and trying to address it, what we've been taught to do is to mute it. And for me, that's transferring from unconsciousness to consciousness, being aware of that moment. As I told you, for me, it's the breath. Whenever I'm breathing heavy, it's when I think, okay, what's going on? What is happening? What's going on with me? How can I change it? A lot of times, if I just change my breath, it changes. But there are times where I take it as an opportunity. That's where the obsession comes in, to learn something about myself and to understand something about myself. So yeah, I agree with you.
So heavy breathing. For me, actually, I think I stopped breathing. That's when I realized that I'm rarely having panic attacks, but when I do, it's because I just don't breathe at this point of time, and I realize that okay, I actually need to. If somebody reminds me you have to breathe, that I probably would get really annoyed by that as well. I would be like, don't tell me what to do, but I think that's actually quite important to breathe sometimes, and it changes everything.
Quite important.
It's that's how we're alive.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, that's when you're reaching that stage. By the way, that's the extreme side. I mean, think about it. There is breathing nicely and consciously and deep and slow. Then your breath starts shallowing out. And what happens is it moves from your diaphragm all the way up to here. That's why a lot of stressed people have issues with their neck and their shoulders and stuff, because they're breathing very shallow. And then you move into the final stage, which is not breathing at all. I know that, exactly what you're talking about, because a lot of times that was my problem when I was playing sports.
Yeah.
Is that and a lot of athletes face that, by the way, is that at some point that I haven't been breathing, I haven't been breathing for like a good 10 seconds, You go, all of a sudden you're like, whoa, I haven't been breathing for a while. So a good practice is to start being conscious of that before it happens. You know, I talk about this grade of resilience from 0 to 10. You want to be most of your day in 0, 1, 2, 3. 10 is like absolute rage. You know, when you're driving the description, or when you're parenting and all of a sudden you're like losing your mind at this 2 year old that's a 2 year old being a 2 year old, and you're like, "Wah," you know, it drives you crazy. You want to be able, where resilience and sustainability is in all the 10 pillars, is to be able to be at 0, 1, 2, 3, and be able to go and notice when you're at 3. And the more you practice, you start realizing 3 is already, when I'm at 3, I'm very uncomfortable. I need to go back to 0. And 0, by the way, is not neutral, no feelings, whatever. 0 is joy. Our neutral state as a human being is joy. And so you'll see that in any child, in 1 year old, less, before we start deprogramming them from that. No, really, we do that,
Yeah,
you know. Not to put blame on parents, by the way. I'm very careful about that because it causes a lot of guilt, especially with moms. I work a lot with,
yeah,
with
yeah.
high achievers that are mothers that have this constant guilt.
Guilt.
And by the way, men and fathers also struggle with that, but they don't
Absolutely.
talk about it.
Yeah.
But have this constant guilt that is a major cause of chronic stress. And so, how can we go back to 0 most of the time is a very, very important stop for people to take a moment and understand, how can I be at that moment most of the time? And it's different from person to person. That's the beauty of the Ascension method, and where it was, is that it got developed for me at the beginning, but then it got developed over hundreds of people, and I'm starting to understand that everybody has their own way of relating to joy, getting to joy. And it's, the Ascension method is a 1 year journey with me. And the reason it's 1 year journey is because we need to get to the point where we get you to a point where you understand yourself fully, to understand what works for you.
Why men don't talk about feeling guilty? Why is it that men don't talk about guilty?
Men don't talk about
From
feelings
from
in general.
from men's point of view. Since
Men don't think, we're not programmed in this modern day to talk about feelings. I mean, in general, men or
yeah,
women, we're not taught what feelings are. What are they? Why are they there? As children, and I can specifically talk about this region, but I work with people all over the world, and it's a very important stop. Is that as children, as boys, we are taught to not express our emotions, and that expressing emotions is for girls, and expressing emotions is a sign of weakness. And while I understand that sentiment, I also very deeply understand that it has to be taught differently. And it has to be taught differently to different types of boys. There are boys that are softer. There are boys that are harder. There are boys, it's different. You can't apply the same rules to every kid as that have been applied to you as a parent and as a man. Boys, what we do to them is we start teaching them to suppress rather than express. And with suppression, you lose all the things that come after that expression, where you are taught to resolve the situation and resolve your emotions properly. And then you grow up, and what ends up happening is your life starts fulfilling that prophecy. You go to work and they tell you you're not supposed to act certain ways. Guys are not supposed to be this way. One of the things with guys that we know right now from an emotional perspective is suppressed anger, and which becomes rage internally, and each man expresses it differently. Why? That's where it starts. And at the end of the day, right now, we are told as men that it's not appropriate to communicate that way. If I need to express my emotions, no, 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 you're being too masculine, negative, toxic masculine, whatever they call it. You're not supposed to communicate this way. You're supposed to pacify yourself and speak with a tone like that. No, but sometimes I want to express my emotions. I want to talk, and I don't mean anything out of it. This is how I'm expressing my emotions. In the same way, we're now in the feminine, women are talking about being able to express your emotions, being able to cry. It's okay to, to embrace that feminine side of you. With men, we're taught that communicating in a masculine way is not acceptable. Needing to go into your cave to understand and to reflect and to step away from something before you go out and rage is not acceptable. You have to sit and talk. You have to sit and communicate. You have to do all of these things. Whereas men, if we go to our natural being, our natural way of being, we're not wired that way. We can't. So there is this dysbiosis between what the understanding of the feminine is and what it's become, and what the understanding of what the masculine is and what it's become, that needs to be addressed. And my thing is that I don't have the answers to that. I think that it's been so disfigured that it requires a conversation. It requires a new way of looking at it, because you can't bring the way of the old and apply it now, which a lot of people try to do, right? And with the understanding that the way we're doing it right now is not leading us to the best place, that we need to change the conversation, or at least have a conversation about it. And I'm trying to change that here in our world, because of what I've been going through. We physically, mentally, emotionally, from a relationship perspective, from a parenting perspective, I started hitting walls that I needed to understand where I'm at and what is going on. This age of 45, a lot of people now are talking about andropause for men, which is
Okay. Mm-hmm.
when we have a very big decline in our hormones, in our male hormones. And what does that mean and why? Not only that, it's now scientifically proven that men in their 20s and their 30s have significantly less testosterone than we do. And we have significantly less testosterone than our parents, and so forth. And so, what is considered now normal in male testosterone levels, was, let's say, is like 200 right now to 1,100, depending on where you are, would have probably been not even mid range in our great grandfathers. And we're taught, because of how the pharmaceutical industry works and how the medical industry works, without any blame, that this is the norm. They tell you the norm levels when you go test. But if you really look into it, and this is for men and women, if you really look into it, it's very suboptimal. We're not optimal right now in how we are physically, hormonally as men. And that has a direct correlation with chronic stress, a direct correlation with what's happening on a mind level, on a spiritual level. My observation is that we've departed so much from our ancestors because of this modern world. And the beauty of the 10 pillars of life mastery is it reflects that departing. All the things that they used to do as a normal everyday, the fasting, the exercise, the not because they had to fast. They had to go hunt. One day they're successful, 3 days they're not. Okay, so let's eat some berries. Let's eat some, I don't know what. Let's forage. Let's collect. And then they're successful at hunt. And then they eat. They feast. And then they fast. So that's an example. For them to go hunt, they had to go exercise, run for hours, do stuff. This is just what they needed to do to survive and to thrive. When us right now, we're so far departed from that we aren't conscious of the impact of globalization and all of these things that we're going through. And the 10 pillars of life mastery allows you to assess it, to understand, from a nutritional perspective, how are you really feeding your body, your temple? From a spiritual perspective, what are you doing every day to connect, to disconnect, to whatever you need to do? Spirituality. Sorry, I said that. Movement and exercise. How are you moving and exercising? Because when I work with high achievers, there's a very big problem. I used to think that in order for me to relieve my chronic stress or my stress, I need to go hit the gym really hard. But that's adding even extra stress to you. Is it actually the right thing to do at that right time, at that time? Or is, yoga or a walk or a swim better for you at that moment? And leave the hit exercise and the heavy weightlifting for another day where we're not so stressed during the day. So all of these like formulas are what from a human perspective, but most importantly from a male perspective, we have to really have a change of conversation to understand how we can start optimizing ourselves again. It's very important for us as men to number one have the conversation to understand to redefine what that is, in general for the modern time, and then understand what the impact of that general kind of philosophy or general purpose as a man impacts your life personally. So every person is going to be very different. Some people are going to want to be parents, some people are not going to be parents. It impacts every person differently. And every person needs to be conscious enough to understand how they can reach that purpose of masculinity and a man. It looks very different for a different person, but you know, I don't want to feel like I'm keep mentioning the 10 pillars of life mastery, but it's such an important tool and it's out there in my website for people to look at it and to redesign their lives in a way where it serves that higher purpose now. But first, you need to define that higher purpose, which is what I am now very interested in and very keen to start talking about.
What is masculinity for you?
I
How do you
think
define it for yourself?
so. For me, masculinity is an energy that you can call in whenever you need it. It's there for a woman and there for a man, as well as femininity. And we both have different balances of it within our lives. But I think as a man, the masculine energy for us, in general, men or women, is drive, achievement, protection, providing, all of these things that come with the masculine energy. And you can see the movement, like in the feminist movement, how things are a little bit off, and the current masculine movement, how things are a little bit off. And it's just understanding when you need that energy to come in and when you really need it to kind of go back a little bit, and your feminine energy needs to come in a little bit to give a little bit of a balance. And to men, even talking about the feminine energy is a taboo. I don't have feminine energy. You absolutely have feminine energy in you. When you're caring for your child and you understand that this child needs a hug or needs a cuddle, or even Prophet Muhammad, Jesus, Moses, everybody spoke about that. And when you're with your children, be as soft as you can. That softness, we're talking about the feminine energy. We're not talking about the masculine energy. It's like a slider. You go up and down in your life. And I'm not here to judge and I'm not here to define it. Again, I'm here to say what works for you as a person and as a man. But again, we go back to the first point, define it and then start being conscious of it. That you're not overly masculine for subconscious reasons in certain situations, and you're not overly feminine at some point because of certain reasons. How you can present yourself as a man with integrity, with power, with uh, with 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 fearlessness, with obsessiveness, whatever it is, and how sometimes you need to kind of bring
Back
that
off.
back, yeah, back off a little bit and present your softer side, your more empathetic side, your more all of these things. It's a journey. It's no way to really click it on or off. It's like anything else. The most important thing is just to be conscious of it.
How do you feel about men crying?
How do I feel about men crying? I think it's one of those things that has risen from the healing of women, and it's been pushed on us as men as something that is required to be feminine or required to be less on the masculine side. I don't have anything against it. I just think it's a personal thing. If you feel like you need to release energy through crying, it's fine. Where I have an issue with it is when it starts defining what a healed man is. A healed man is a man that can cry or can cry more or whatever. I think it's personal. As long as you have a healthy crying for me is not an emotion, and that's another thing. People think that crying is an emotion. Crying is an expression of an emotion. It's an outlet of an emotion. So as long as you have a healthy outlet of expressing how you feel, your anger, your rage, mostly in men, then it could be through crying, it's fine, but it also could be through other healthy means. And as long as you have an ability to express that in a way that resolves the situation and makes you go back to your center, then I'm all for it, whatever it is.
You don't see it as an essential part of healing. I personally don't see it as essential part of healing in women. And I had difficulty crying in general for like very long time. Now I can cry at any time, but I think also that's related to recently having a baby, most probably. But
Yeah.
it's just hormones rather than me actually wanting to cry, because sometimes I cry and I don't have anything to cry about.
I mean, crying is hormonal.
Yeah, it's no, it's not hormonal.
It is
part of the hormones.
It's
Yeah,
a hormonal reaction.
yeah. So I don't see like that as part of healing for women, but yeah, it's interesting to like hear the point of view of a man.
It's not a part of healing for anybody. It's not a necessary part of healing for anybody. Again, that's what I was saying. That's the misconception, is that it requires to be there for people to heal. I do like very deep sessions of breath work and meditation with groups or people. And the one thing that I noticed is that there are a lot of people attached to this sense of what healing is supposed to be, regardless of, and it looks very differently to different people. It used to disturb me when I first started doing my hypnosis courses and NLP and breath work and all of that stuff that I did very, very deeply and intensely. I used to always think, why am I not having the same reaction as everybody else? Actually, the one moment that I really realized that I had a major shift was the total opposite. And it took me 2 days to realize I had a major shift. And it was this tool, this vibrational tool that I did. And what ended up happening was I came out of it and I looked at the room and people were crying and on the floor and having all of these experiences. And I'm like, I don't feel anything. That's the first thing I thought. I don't feel anything. I felt numb. Okay. And then, unfortunately, the person that was supposed to supervise us thought that there was something wrong with me and made me feel even worse because I wasn't having the experience as everybody else. When I realized it is actually, these courses, sometimes, I don't know if you've been through this, but there are some people that do these courses and want you to be tired on purpose. So we sleep at like 1 a.m. and we wake up at like 5 a.m. On a continuous cycle.
Yeah.
I understand the reason behind it. And this was midway, so it was like on the 12th day or something like that. I went home, I saw my wife in the morning, and I was just quiet. I had nothing to say, had no emotions. I didn't want to talk about anything. I was having a good day. I was tired too. And I started talking to her about it, and I'm like, listen, I don't even know if I want to go back, literally, because I don't feel like I'm having the same experience as everybody else. And she's like, maybe just your experience. My wife is infinitely wise by nature, very lucky. I call her Guru G sometimes because she just has this like infinite kind of internal wisdom. And she's like, maybe you're just exactly where you need to be, exactly what you need to be. So on the drive there, I noticed, this noise, the sound, I noticed there was nothing, not a single voice in my head, no self-doubt, nothing. I was just driving neutrally, smile on my face, having a great day, although I was so tired. And I realized at that moment that was my shift. And my shift looked nothing like anybody else. And as a person that does this for people now, it made me very, very, very focused and aware that I can't judge this experience with someone, because sometimes as a healer, whatever you call yourself, I don't like that word. I don't want to call myself that. But as somebody that's facilitating healing for people, you get attached to the experience they're having, and it becomes egoistic. If they're not crying and having this crazy, experience, you feel like you failed. And at the end of the day, it's not like that. And I'm very, very thankful for that kind of experience that made me realize both for myself and for other people, it looks very different for different people.
Because that's what I was going to say. Like, I've experienced lots of coaches and, I don't know, psychologists and, talking therapy, let's call it all. They want to make the person cry, and till they see the person cry, that's when they're like, okay, now you're healing. So they don't let go until they actually like get this reaction. And it's you're right. It's egoistic. It's ego of the coach rather than the person, because sometimes the person, this is not how they learn to express feelings, and this is not their way of expressing feelings in general. So that's not necessarily the healing journey that, everyone is talking about, how healing should look ugly. What if it doesn't? What if it doesn't have to look ugly? What if you don't have to have a meltdown? What if you don't have to cry? What if you don't have to be, what if you don't have to hit the rock bottom to heal? What if that's actually the reality? Maybe we don't need to go through all this. Sometimes we don't need to go through all this stuff. The range of emotions or range of expression of variety of emotions to heal. What if healing can be joyful? And I think it should be joyful.
Yes.
But different people just experience it in a different way. So if you are healing and you're not experiencing, like, you're not crying, you're not having a meltdown, you're looking around you and everyone is feeling something and expressing it in one way or another, and you are not feeling it this way, doesn't mean that something wrong with you.
Yes.
But I think nobody talks about it enough, that this is not how healing should look like.
Yes.
This not necessarily, we have the picture of how healing has to look like, and it has to be ugly, definitely.
Yes.
So when we don't go through this, we feel like we're not progressing and we're not healing and we're not getting better. There is no change in our life. So that's it. Like, we are doomed forever. Nothing's going to happen. Like, we're not going to get there.
Yeah.
We're not going to reach our goal in healing.
Yeah.
And
I've coached a lot of coaches in my life. And I think the most important skill for a coach is to approach every session, their life in general. This is general advice for everybody. But for coaches in particular, it's very important that when you sit with your client, you put yourself in a position of, I don't know what I don't know. It's very, very important. Don't bring your own crap into a session, because if you really, really deeply understand what human interaction is, and that this person is an expression of you, then when you come with that kind of frame of mind, you are not energetically putting on your biases and your subconscious programs and your subconscious beliefs, and you're allowing them to just be who they are. A lot of times, just doing that, just giving them the space, I promise you, I started noticing, like, I don't do a lot of hypnosis and NLP and stuff anymore. I vibrationally accept this person as they are, and I infinitely believe that they can heal themselves. All I need to do is allow them the position and the space, and hold the space for them to do what they're naturally born to do. That's it. So you put yourself in that position vibrationally through a meditation, whatever you need to do, and release all of the stuff of how things should be. Should it be ugly? Should it be not ugly? No. It will be whatever is meant to be for them. And if you can put yourself in that position, then healing happens naturally. You don't even need to do anything. Just look at this person like they're perfectly healed, and they know inside of them, subconsciously, their subconscious, their inner self knows exactly what they need to do. They just need to get out of their own way. And that's the key. That's the key to helping people heal. Problem is, a lot of people identify themselves as healers. You're not a healer. I'm sorry, you're not healing anything. What you're doing is you're allowing them to heal. You're giving them the opportunity and the space for them to heal themselves. And that's a very different position, because then you don't have any answers. You don't have any imagination of what it looks like or what it should look like.
Because you're a facilitator, you're not your healer. healer and like all this like buzzwords, they are assuming that you are actively doing something to a person
Yes.
for them to get somewhere.
Yes.
But in reality of things, we do not actively do anything. We're just there being a facilitator to whatever they're going through. And we are a neutral place where they can, and that's why I like coaching, because it's a neutral person you come to that doesn't have any agenda on how things should look for you, how your life should be, how what is it there for you, like your friends, your family members. Sometimes they have all of them have some sort of agenda on how things should be for you, but not the coach. If it's the right person for you, this coach shouldn't be having any sort of agenda for how your healing or whatever you're going through should look like.
Yeah.
And putting ourselves into that position, I think it's very powerful, and it's very difficult. As humans, we tend to judge, and we tend to assume, and we tend to jump into conclusion very quickly. So that's very important, to put ourselves into this position as we are. It's coming through us to them, and not, we are not actively doing anything to a person to become something or to go through something.
Absolutely. I stopped calling myself a coach for that reason. I don't think that, personally, I know this is going to ruffle a lot of feathers, but I don't think that this word coaching has become what it was meant to be. It's become an industry. It's come with biases. It comes with do's and don'ts, and you should do this and you shouldn't do that. And to me, I try to live my life in a position of I don't know what I don't know in totality.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like coaching has become I know what I know, and it has this rules and regulations and stuff that you can do and you can't do. And I, to be very honest with you, I've been a coach my whole life. I just realized it later. You know, as a leader in sports, as a leader in the government, as an uncle at the age of 12 to 7 kids of my sisters, I've always been a coach. I've always been telling people what to do, and I feel like I've always felt like I had this old soul or whatever you call it. But the reality is, I've been coaching and doing it my whole life, and I just think sometimes I really do not like labels in general. I don't like labels because I feel like labels, and this comes from a strategic branding person. This is what I do. I do labels and I create strategies and stuff like that. But sometimes I feel like labels are very defining and
Mm-hmm.
constraining. You know, if I would have continued calling myself a coach, I wouldn't have been able to flow and go according to where my life is. If I was really married to that idea, I'm a coach, and all of that stuff, I wouldn't have been able to move into what I do now with men, and still have my performance aspect of what I do, and go into all kinds of different entrepreneurial journeys and other things that I do. And I don't feel like I would have been. I would have been really married to this idea that I need to be the best, knowing myself. This is personal, please. This is no judgment to anybody. I don't think that I would have been very flowy in what I do. Or it's this position of putting myself in I don't know what I don't know, where I feel like I'm do my best
Mm-hmm.
to not live a judgmental life. Judgment is one of the, in my opinion, is one of the worst things that make humans the way we are perceived. I'm sure to other creatures or beings or whatever. It's because we have a lot of judgments. We are taught through generations and through what we've been programmed that there is a right or wrong. You know, you're born, you're given a name, you're given an identity, you're given, sorry, not an identity, is all of these are going to form your identity. You're given a nationality. Even within a nationality, a city from city is different.
Yeah.
You're given a religion, you're given all of these things, and then all of a sudden you're this person that has an identity by the age of 7. It's fully formed, right? And it becomes I am this person. I'm sorry, this is exactly who you are not. right?
Yeah.
You are, all these definitions are exactly who you are not at the source of your being, at this human experience, who you are and what you're supposed to do. You've been given all of this stuff. And I feel like our life journey is literally our purpose is to redefine these definitions that have been given to us to what we feel our soul was here to achieve. If you're able to do that by consciously living your life and redefining keep what you've been given that you enjoy, and leave the stuff that you don't without fear, or trying to not have fear associated with that, with joy. And then when you get to the point where you are consciously aware of who you really want to be, life changes. The universe starts throwing at you stuff that you should be doing. And if you're not fully conscious then even, and living in I don't know what I don't know, and thinking I am and I know what I know, then you're going to miss all the signs, and you're going to miss all the synchronicities and all of these things that the universe and God is sending your way to guide you towards your flow. It's absolutely the most important thing for me is living non-judgment, I don't know what I don't know perspective in life. Not being so married to all these things that you've been taught and been conditioned to be.
And not identify like anything. Is it that? Because I find it difficult. I'll tell you reasons why. So when I studied for coaching and I started being a coach, I could not call myself a coach. I had difficulty calling myself a coach. And then after I started doing photography, and I didn't call myself a photographer just because I do photography. And I'll tell you, like, I find it a bit, I find it, I don't know, silly a little bit for me as, call myself, okay, what am I, like 10 people? Like, just because I have a company, I'm going to call myself, I don't know, entrepreneur. And then because I'm in business, I'm going to call myself businesswoman. Then I'm going to call, how do you, present yourself when you have more than one thing that you do? And I find it like, it's the list of things that I'm going to name that I am, because essentially I'm human being, and that likes doing coaching, that likes photography, that likes being in business, that likes, I don't know, I at some point of time I used to be translating, and that was my job. But even then I wasn't calling myself translator, and that allowed me to go into then business development somehow. But I don't know why I find it difficult, like, to call myself something. And I find the list of things that I can call myself is just too big for me to introduce myself as that. So I can just go and be Nara, and that's me. And then everything else are just things that I do rather than me. I am not a photographer. I am not a coach. I am Nara. And then everything else, like, that's my name, and everything else are just things that I do at this point of time. So that's I find it difficult. I don't know why is it difficult for me to frame it in a way that, which I know it's important for branding, but that's the only reason why I mention all these things whenever I mention them on social media. But other than that, I find it, I don't know why this is the way to introduce yourselves.
Should I get really philosophical?
Go ahead.
Okay. So, we all come from God, consciousness, whatever it's called. And at some point, we were all one. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Now, reflect on what you just said, on what I'm going to tell you. In order for God, consciousness, to experience itself in this 3D world, it needed to separate. Correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
You're God, I'm God. If we were one, we wouldn't be able to experience this. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So in order for us to experience, we had to create time, distance. That's why they say time and distance doesn't exist in the 5D world, in the 5D realm. It exists only here on this plane, right? When we meditate and we rise, we don't experience time. Our relationship with time completely becomes very different, right? So in order for us to experience ourselves, there is a very deep need within that to identify ourselves as something different.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there is this need to say, I am something, and you are something, And that way we can talk about things and relate to each other in certain things. This has to be to do with husband, wife, relationships, career, everything, right? But deep down inside, this is how I imagine it. But deep down inside, all we want to do is we want to go back to that because that is the truth. That is the reality of the reality,
Yeah.
right? So we all have this feeling. We don't want to be labeled. We're not labeled. We're, like you said, we're beings. We're not human beings. We're having a human being experience from a
Yeah.
spiritual perspective. But in reality, we're so much more than that. Our soul is so much more than that. And our soul knows. And this deep feeling inside of you, I don't want to be defined, is that that's how I imagine it to be. It's because we all just want to be. I remember when I first married my wife, she used to say that to me all the time. I just want to be. When we used to argue. And I had all of these, very honestly, there's like masculine, over masculine representations of what a husband and wife needs to be and stuff like that. And she's very open, very open. God bless her. And I was like this, right? Especially when I decided to get married. I wasn't like this before, but when I decided to get married, all these subconscious programs came of what a husband's supposed to be and what a wife's supposed to be before I knew everything I know now. And she used to say that to me all the time. I just want to be. And it used to drive me crazy. I swear to God, I used to go nuts. What do you mean you just want to be? I'm telling you, this is how it's supposed to be, and this is how it's supposed to be. And she's poor girl. I mean, she. Sometimes I think about it, and she must think, wow, this guy's been through a journey. Really, like this guy's changed, really, because I'm completely different than when I got married. Completely, completely. But it's this hyper awareness of the fact that we are programmed to be the way we are. And in a way, it's very tricky because we are having this human experience and we're having it for a reason and it has a purpose. But at the same time, there's a deep knowing inside of us that understands that this is just a dream. This is not real. The reality is something we, as a human being in this human experience, you'll never, ever be ever able to understand. That's why the Bible, the Quran, when all of these things, when they came as stories for us to be able to understand something at a much bigger level, infinite level, that we'll never be able to fathom. But this feeling that you're feeling is directly related to this. I feel like it's an internal conflict of this
Yeah.
human existence that we have as a human being. It's this, you know, then we go back to the point. If you're conscious of it, if you're aware of it, you will understand how it will just come to you. Because the soul, when you're conscious of it and you're conscious of what the soul is here for and what's there for and what it's doing, it'll rest. And when it rests, it allows things to come to you. And when things are coming to you and you relax to it, you're relaxed for it and you allow it to happen and you understand that everything is happening for you, nothing is happening to you. You start going into this flow, surrender. Flow and surrender is the last. The ascension method is 4 steps. Step number 4 is flow and surrender. It's at the moment where I started understanding this at a very, very deep level. I used to do crazy meditations. I used to do like 3-4 hour sitting meditations sometimes. And a lot of the stuff, when I started balancing these things out, I started understanding at a very, very deep level that the most important thing we need to do as humans is to live consciously and be aware. And just things happen magically for you. I'm not saying everything's going to be positive and
Yeah.
quote unquote good.
Yeah.
No, some of the stuff that happened to me where you told me, how'd you get here, whatever, all of this stuff. If I tell you the many stories between this, like government, corporate, whatever, what's happened to me, I was agoraphobic. You know what that means? For a while, I couldn't leave the house for a year. I couldn't leave my flat for a year when I was 26, 27, because something happened in my career that scared the living hell out of me and I couldn't leave the house. There were moments in my life that were really, really, really negative. When I came back from university, my brother and my father lost their jobs within 2 weeks, and I was the breadwinner for the family. I studied I had a Bachelor of Fine Arts, hippie. I came home thinking I'm gonna paint beautiful pictures and sell them to people, and then all of a sudden they lost their jobs, and I'm the youngest male, and I had to step up and provide for the whole family. All of a sudden, but overnight, my life changed. So I've had these things in my life that happened that have completely like frazzled me. But now, when I'm living consciously and I'm hyper aware of these things, these were absolutely necessary things for my soul's existence and what I had to experience to get to, hopefully, to my soul's purpose in this lifetime. Everything happens for you. I'm of an utmost conviction of that. Just think about it from this way. How much less stressed are you going to be in any given moment and in any given situation if you know that this is happening for you? The worst thing that's happened, your death. I used to be very scared of death. I used to not be able to sleep at night. I had insomnia. I used to sleep with the lights on. But now, when you understand that even that is happening for you, for your journey, how easy are you going to sleep at night? Doesn't matter.
It's surrender.
Surrender.
It's surrender.
Yeah, that's the definition of surrender. Understanding that everything is happening for you. Everything is in cause. You're in cause all the time. If you can return yourself to that position with consciousness, life becomes, that's where I'm telling you, zero, joy. You become resilient. You're not going to 10. You're going to 0 to 3. All of these things I spoke about before have a direct relationship with this mode of living.
That's the most difficult one, to flow.
Yes. Well, in reality, it's the easiest thing. We make it difficult.
We make it difficult because we always feel like we can actually influence and make something differently.
Yes.
And
that's resistance.
Yeah.
The opposite of flow.
Yeah. And we're resisting from anything that's happening to us. And we feel like we can, even when you I don't know, something happens to you and you always take it as it's happening to me, but I can do something about it.
Yes.
And that's I think, how humans' brain operate, or how we've been conditioned to that there's something that we can always do about any given situation. And I'm guilty of that. I always feel like I can get out of any situation. It's me that I can get out. I have so much power in me that I can get out of it. But if I would just let it, and that makes me stressed.
Yes.
Which if I let this go, then the flow of, okay, it's happening, and it's regardless of whether I'm there or not, whether I'm fixing it or not, it's going to happen and it's going to resolve somehow.
Yes. I'm not somebody that's saying you don't have to take action.
No.
I'm not to that extreme. There are people to that extreme and say, just relax. Have you ever read this book, The Surrender Experiment?
No.
Those
are two words that are not working for me.
as an entrepreneur,
yeah.
And from that perspective, everybody has to read that book, because that's the extreme side of how you can build a multi-billion-dollar organization through complete surrender, right? And that's a little bit, to me, it's a little bit, even for me, I'm a very woo-woo person in a way, a very pragmatic woo-woo person. Even to me, sometimes I struggle with that idea because, as you said, sometimes you need to do.
Yeah.
And I believe that. For me, where it's different is this a conscious do, or is it an unconscious do? Is it an action, or is it a reaction?
Yeah.
Right? And the only difference is that you take a moment, you take a deep breath, you allow intuition rather than self-reactiveness from a subconscious perspective, and you create a plan and a strategy, and you act accordingly. And then you don't self-judge yourself if it doesn't go the way you've decided to go. Because when you go that way, sometimes you're led to go in that direction for you to hit a dead end, to pivot or to switch. And if you're relaxed about it, the pivoting and the switching becomes just second nature. It's not a problem. I failed at this business as an entrepreneur. I failed at this business. I didn't fail. I learned so many lessons until I got to the point where I learned a major lesson. And now I can pivot into something else and take all of this learning with me and make it even more successful. The best entrepreneurs in the world understand that sometimes you hit it and sometimes you don't. And there's no judgment. Everybody's at their own pace and everybody will get there at their own time. And if you go that way, how much more joy in your life will you have? Again, how much more resilient will you be? How much more sustainable will you be? How much less chronic stress, fatigue syndrome, hitting rock bottom are you going to have? It all goes hand in hand. The thing is, going back to the point, is that before, in our ancestors, our primal selves, this used to happen to them because of the way they used to live. They were able to put themselves in this place because of the way they used to live. When they used to go hunt, I read this series of books. I forgot what it was called. Beautiful. It's about anthropology and sociology, but in the beginning of man, when man and Neanderthals coexisted and Homo sapiens were taking control. I'll remember the book and I'll send you the name. My daughter is actually named after the lead character, Ayla. And so they described that when men used to go to hunt, they used to leave the tribe in certain areas of the world, and they used to go like hunt for mammoths or something like that. And they used to go away for months at a time, right? From a male perspective, just imagine how freeing that is for a man to be able to go with a bunch of men and go hunt. Do you imagine that there was a lot of talking? No. They probably talked about their emotions. They probably talked about their feelings. They probably got stuff out. They probably did crazy stuff, like any group of guys would do. And then it becomes zen, traveling, walking, hunting. I don't know if you've ever experienced hunting, but when you hunt, you need to be hyper conscious and aware, right? So you got all of these things. Now, when we're hunting, going to a restaurant, we're watching TV, we're talking to each other, we're not paying attention to our food, we're not blessing our food, we're not doing all of these things. This is just from a nutrition perspective. We're not doing any of this stuff. So imagine the departing from what we were to where we are now, and we think that we are modernized and better off and all of these things. As a natural state, all of these 10 pillars, we had them optimized just by being that, right? Yes, modernization and all of that is beautiful, but we have to be conscious of what we've departed from and how we can take some of that and apply it to what we do now.
They were much more balanced back then than we are now.
Yes.
Because our hunting is in grocery.
Yes.
In the grocery, we don't even have any more those.
I haven't been to the grocery in like a year maybe. Everything comes to me.
I started doing it back again. Yeah, I used to order everything. So I think because of COVID, and we just started ordering everything online. And I felt like I cannot eat the food that somebody else chose for me. I like to go and I like to feel the apples. I like to smell the fruits, and for them to smell like something and not like plastic.
Yes.
To buy them myself and to choose them myself, to buy meat, to look at the meat, to look at the color of whatever I'm buying, rather than. And I do that now religiously, like every week I do it, because that's, first of all, it's time off, and I go by myself for 2 hours. I finish all the groceries, I come back. But I actually physically want to do it. I don't want to drop this habit because everything is online. Everything's online. And it frustrates me because I'm not coming from this generation which is used to this online things.
Yes.
I'm still in the middle, yes, it was there, but it wasn't to this point. So I enjoy real things. And that's why probably we go camping and we do all these activities that bring us closer to nature and closer to how we used to do stuff rather than how it is now.
It's so necessary. There are a few things that you just said there that I picked up on. It was time for me to go away and be by myself and go forage. That's in ancient times. When men went to hunt, women probably, as far as we can discern at the moment, stayed. There are some tribes where actually women followed the men, ran after them, like they'd run 100 kilometers a day to hunt. And the women and the kids and everybody would follow them. They'd run 100 kilometers a day. It's known. It's in Africa. There's this book called Born to Run. These stories in them are amazing. And however, if you talk about the normal narrative, women stayed and they cared for the kids and they had time to chit chat and talk and whatever and resolve their emotions in their way. But they also went to forage. And the thing is that they had a tribe, and the kids grew up with everybody and grew up with different women, and different women breastfed them, and different, they had all of that stuff available to them. So some women probably were able to go forage by themselves into the whatever, pick some berries, pick, I don't know what, pick whatever they were picking, cactus, whatever you lived, right? And they brought it home, but that was their time to go connect with nature, to like all these things that you're talking about from a feminine perspective. I need to connect with nature. From a human perspective, I need to go look at my food. I need to pick my food. I need to, because I need to bring that back to home, and I want to bring the best thing for my family. And all of that stuff is a depart from the ancient ways. And it's, movement, walking, God forbid, walk to the supermarket,
It's a
which is
lot of physical activities.
yeah. I find myself doing that sometimes. I remember
Yeah.
one time I was going to the gym and my cousin was with me, and I was trying to find the closest parking to the gym.
That's what I do every time.
Yeah, and my cousin, he's half Swedish. He owns the Swedish dental clinic here. Shout out to them. And he was like, he just came from Sweden. They walk everywhere. And he was like, "What the hell are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm going around trying to find a parking right there." He's like, "We're going to the gym."
You're gonna go on a
Take it as a
treadmill.
warm up. Exactly. And I don't take these stories very lightly. I am the kind of person that sinks really deep into analysis. Like I analyze these things very deeply, the human condition and where we are, and I'm just kind of wired this way, I guess, And all of these things, like you shopping, us to the gym, whatever, are all an indication of why we are where we are.
Yeah.
Overweight, sick, obese, depressed, anxious. All of that stuff is all a direct depart of what we are really essentially as a human being. I'm not saying we need to go back to those days where I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying we need to consciously be aware of how far we are from these things and how we can bring these elements into our lives. When you're eating, take a moment, sit in silence, give thanks to the food, give thanks to where the food came from, whether it's an animal or a plant or whatever kind of food you're into, then eat and talk to your friends and stuff like that. That alone scientifically proven, has a direct impact on your digestion, and that has a direct impact on your microbiome kind of diversity in your stomach and how everything reacts to everything. That thought at the beginning for 5 seconds can completely kick in your digestion at a completely different level. How can we incorporate these things consciously into what we do every day? Walking. They say you need 10,000 steps a day. That is the least, that's the minimum amount you need. The minimum amount you need for you to get enough movement. All of these things.
And we barely make it.
Them.
We are barely making it.
Yeah.
10,000, like it's an achievement when you do it. It's a lot of walking,
Yeah,
especially like here, because we
especially
don't really, especially here. I think when I travel back home, it's quite easy to achieve that, but because you walk in most of the places, but here I drive in most of the places that I cannot even imagine myself walking in the street. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
Nobody's in the street. Nobody's walking in the street. What am I going to do by myself there in the street? I walk dogs. That's it. That's the probably only time when you walk.
You're lucky. That's like one of the main reasons I wanted to get a dog, was to get that exercise again.
You're forced to go out. Like you're forced to do it, and you're forced to walk because, and it's again not because of you, not because you're consciously choosing to walk, but because you are, serving another being to do what they need to do.
Yeah, but you're also interacting with nature.
Yeah.
You're interacting with other beings and stuff like that are a lot more, in tune with their primal needs than we've been taught to mute these things. And some people I know at the level I work with find walking very primitive. Yeah, think about it. They don't want to walk. They want the chauffeur to come pick them up from here and take them to their helicopter, and the
Yeah.
helicopter take them to I don't know where, and stuff like that. Which is it's when we talk about it, it's seen as not something we do the at the high levels
Yeah.
of society,
True. Yeah.
and it's applicable to all of us. All of us going down to upper middle class to middle class to whatever. All of us want to get to the point where
when we don't have
we
to
don't
walk.
move. Like
Yeah.
if somebody can come pick up my chair and take me to my car and drive my car for me, and all of that is seen as moving up in life.
Yeah, success.
Success,
That's how
yes.
success looks like. Yeah, and then we go to the a place which is designed for you to walk more on a treadmill, and I was even thinking to get a treadmill and have it in the house, and then
And walk with it with the dogs.
I know, and then I was thinking to myself, like, just walk the dogs, walk the dogs. Just don't get a treadmill in the house. If you really want to walk, you're gonna walk around neighborhood. You're not gonna walk on the treadmill. Like, it's ridiculous watching TV, and like, don't do that because it's gonna take away from me what I'm aiming for, to move more, to be more active, to do more things like in nature as much as possible, in the climate. But it's all these little things are taking away the essential places where we actually, I find it very meditative to walk, especially when I'm alone. And then with dogs, all I can concentrate on is just the walk. And I look around, I see birds, I see, I don't know, some unusual flowers and trees, and you would be surprised. And just yesterday, I was telling my husband a story about the birds that are flying there. And I was like, oh, those are the special birds. And it's like, what? What are you talking about? Are you insane? And then I realized I sound insane. I think it's so important. We are not connected with ourselves anymore. And that's where the issue is.
That's what people describe it as. People that get out of their chronic stress into walking describe it as meditative.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's not meditative. It's your natural way of being.
Yeah, that's how we're meant to be.
It's crazy that we use this terminology for walking and having an experience of walking, that it's totally meditative. It's not. It's your natural, neutral essence. That's what it is. That's how you're supposed to be all the time. That's how life is supposed to be. That's how conscious you're supposed to be. You're supposed to be noticing these crazy birds and whatever all the time, as much as possible. Try to, consciously bring yourself back to that point. When you're asking me what does joy mean to you, this is exactly what it means to you. Going back to that state of being completely conscious of every single moment of your life. When you're working, if you love your job, and if you don't love your job, it's very difficult. If you love your job, you're going to be completely immersed in the moment, and time is not going to... A lot of people say that.
Yeah.
Competitive athletes, people that are, in the industry of like film and stuff like you guys are, or whatever, podcasting.
Yeah.
You lose the moment. I don't know how long I've been here. I love podcasting.
Yeah.
I love talking to people. I don't know how long it's been. To me, it feels like it's been ages.
Also, it tells that we don't have a clock here.
Right, yeah.
We don't have a clock, so there is no time.
Good.
Yeah.
I lose myself in these moments, and it's totally cool. Sometimes I lose myself and I have this subconscious, what are you doing? Time, calendar.
Yeah, you have other things to do. And that's how our life is built, right? We're not conscious, just not always because it's because of us, but because of the circumstances we have around us. So building those little conscious moments in our life, like for me, it's walking dogs. And then, I don't know, like I quite like driving, was like, even though I have the road rage from time to time, I still love driving.
I don't know what that says about you, by the way.
I still like driving. So for me, this is the times when I'm alone in the car, like I'm doing what I like to do and I'm not bothered. And that's when my head is clear. I think this is the thing that I like the most about it. Like, it's your head clears out from all this like busyness, and we're meant to be this busy. We're meant to be this, like always doing something. And I cannot relax. I find extremely difficult relaxing, because for me, relaxing is like same as
Weakness.
being lazy. Same as being lazy. And for God forbid I'm gonna be lazy. Oh my God, I'm just, this is the worst thing I can be. And I know that it's preconditioning. So now I'm trying to relax. And sometimes I sit on the sofa and I'm thinking to myself, right now I'm being lazy. And then I actually like stress the whole family not to be lazy, right? We have to do something. And then I sit there and I'm like, okay, try to relax. We're not going to do anything. We're just going to sit. We're just going to sit. Try to relax and sit and do not talk to anyone and try to make everyone do something. And it's so difficult for me.
Yeah, I'll tell you why. You want me to tell you why?
Yeah.
Because you're trying to relax.
Yeah.
Right? If you think about that word, and I'm sure you do, because you probably coach people to think about it. When you're trying to relax, relaxation is just a way of being.
Yeah, but trying to relax someone, it's already to do. It's a job for me. It's another task for me to do.
Yeah, exactly. It's adding to your tasks already.
Yeah, so it's making me stressed because you go on vacation and you try to relax, and I'm like, I'm trying to relax here, but then I realize I'm not relaxing. Yeah. I'm trying to do something that's so unnatural to me because of the way, the way, I don't know, I was raised maybe, or the way I am, with the way I was growing. It's unnatural state of mind to be relaxed.
Believe me, look, we're two Capricorns at home, and we are both. Look, I'll tell you about my wife, okay? My wife has a PhD. She works in a very, very critical position in Abu Dhabi government. She's a mother. She's an entrepreneur. She owns her own business. She published her own book. She has her hands in, she like lectures in universities and talks about. And me, I'm also kind of the same high achieving, high performing kind of person. We're both Capricorns, which means that's elevated to a certain degree. And we literally, I'm not telling you, listen, all these things I'm talking about is me talking about them consciously, but I switch into my unconscious times, And I can't describe to you how sometimes we look at each other and we just crack up. Because we're like, what's going on? I'm sitting talking to her, laptop on one side, my iPad is on the other side, my phone is here, and I'm also parenting, and all this, and while eating, all of this going on. Yeah. And sometimes we just kind of realize that we're kicking into this unconscious program of what you're saying. This is how I was brought up. I'm not brought up to think that you should rest. Rest? Some people say, you rest when you die. Imagine.
That's what I say all the time. That's what I say all the time.
I used to say that.
I'm joking about it, but it's the reality. That's the way, in somewhere subconscious, that's how I think.
Yes.
I work out and then I'm tired and I realize that I'm pushing myself to the point that I cannot push myself anymore. Yes. And then I'm like, we're going to relax when we die. You know what? We push it 2 more extra minutes and then I'm done.
Yes.
But it's not how it should be. It's not how it's meant to be.
No.
Even relaxing, even being lazy, there is no such thing as being lazy. Yes. Like taking a nap for me. Oh my God. It's like I wasted my whole life in this one hour nap. And I'm fighting myself to try to take a nap, to feel, because we know that we're tired. You know that you're just taking, drinking 5 more coffees a day just to stay awake and to be able to concentrate on anything that you're doing. But instead of that, you can just take a nap.
Yeah. So that's when I started doing NLP and hypnosis and understanding the reason why I did it is because I really wanted to understand at that point, when I told you about the Ironman journey, why I was doing this to myself. So I came to a very deep realization that I'm doing this to myself.
Yes.
Why am I doing this to myself? What am I doing? When I sit and I think about it, I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I waking up at 4:00 in the morning to go to Al Qudra? And I hate long distance stuff. When I was one of the top Asian players at squash, that's what I was, okay? At the age of 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. My coach used to beg me to get up and run. And at that point, I tell him, I don't run. Sorry, it's not me. I'll do whatever you want in the court. Whatever you want me to do in the court, I'll train for 5-6 hours a day. But please don't take me out for a jog. I can't do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. Is it important for, we can go into that. Yeah. I don't want to go into it. Is it important to complete you as an athlete? Yes. I just didn't want to do it. I hate running. I don't like the way I hate. I don't like running. I don't like long distance stuff. I'm a swimmer. I used to be a swimmer. I can swim 25 meters, 50 meters amazingly. But don't tell me swim 1,000 meters. Ironman was 4K, right? Cycling, 90K if you're doing half Ironman, 180K if you're doing full Ironman. Just to describe to you, 90K, the Dubai race, Suqaim to Bab al-Shams, I'm back. That's 90K. 3-4 hours to some people.
Yeah, I don't even drive there.
Okay?
That I don't
Yeah.
even like to drive that far.
And then you get off and you do a half marathon right after. No break, nothing. Okay? So this is not me.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why I completely broke down physiologically was what I wasn't able to switch my system from anaerobic to aerobic. And part of it is because mentally I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it. But I forced myself to do it. I forced myself and I forced myself. I forced myself until one day my body was like, no more. By the way, when I raced the half Ironman, I didn't tell you, I was really sick. I had a major flu. And I woke up and I did it. And I beat my personal best time by maybe 30 minutes. But I switched onto something that scared me at the end. Because my heart rate, the average heart rate I had was about 170 to 180, average heart rate over 5 hours. I don't remember how much, 5 point something hours. Imagine. When my plan with my coach was that my average heart rate was supposed to be between 130 and 140, right? I completely literally burnt my system down, literally, because I kicked into something that was,
Forcing yourself into something that you.
I won't even call it that.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. Like, I could have died. I know I could have died.
Yeah, so suicide could be in many different forms
Yes.
and shapes, and that's
Yes.
how I always say it's being a martyr, right? In a way, you're
Yeah.
like self-harming,
Yes.
but in a healthy way. So that's
Yes.
not considered
Yes.
self-harming, but
Yes.
it is a self-harm.
Yes, exactly.
It is.
So that's when I started that's when the biggest realization is, why am I harming myself? Why am I doing this to myself? At that point. Then I started understanding subconsciously there were things within me that were pushing me to to do these things.
Yeah.
First realization was, the biggest realization was, I'm doing it to myself, right? Which means that I have the power to change it. Because what was happening then was the medical world weren't really understanding what was going on. I saw like maybe 10 different doctors. Everyone was diagnosing me bipolarism, chronic depression, if that's from a mental perspective.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, I never got into the medication side and stuff of it because I just didn't want to. But then also all kinds of stuff physically. And it was crazy. And at one point, I was like, it doesn't matter what you're going to do for me physically. If I don't figure out why I'm doing this, it's just going to be a cyclic kind of
Yeah.
self-fulfilling prophecy, they call it. I'm self-fulfilling the prophecy of my subconscious conditioning repeatedly. Again, the timeline of my life I told you about, I'm just self-fulfilling it. Athlete, crash down. Study, crash down. Government, crash down. Corporate, crash down. Ironman, crash down. And it's literally like this. Told you, 28, I was a senior advisor in the government. At 28, like this, my career progression was insane. And these severe falls, were just my being, my body, and this
Fighting it.
dream reality telling me that I'm not realizing what was going on a subconscious level. Why are you doing this to yourself?
Robot.
Huh?
Yeah, like a robot.
Yeah,
Like a robot. Just like
exactly.
a program to do
Yeah,
this thing. So I
yeah,
have to do it, and
yeah.
and that's it. That's
Yeah.
all you can do, and you see.
That's how I talk about that exactly like that. We're all programmed robots.
Yeah.
All of us. At the subconscious humanistic 3D realm, our human experience. We're all programmed robots. And nobody has the ability to deprogram us or reprogram us except ourselves. That's also my relationship on a philosophical level with AI. A lot of people are talking about AI and not considering the spiritual reason
Yeah.
of why AI is here, what it's trying to communicate to us as human beings. Why did we create it? Nobody's addressing this issue from a spiritual perspective.
No.
Nobody. We're all having this conversation that AI could be more intelligent than us at some point. But AI is only a manifestation of us. At this level of intelligence, first it was electricity, then it was internet. Now
Without
it's
conditioning, though.
huh?
Without conditioning, right? The
Yeah.
AI will not have the conditioning, the preconditioning and conditioning that we have. Eventually, I think that's gonna
I don't
grow
know.
into that.
I don't know. But what I know is that this conversation of whether they are more intelligent than us, I don't think that they're ever going to be more intelligent than us.
No.
If you talk about the spiritual intelligence. But
Yeah.
if you talk about the real 3D intelligence, yes, they might be much more intelligent than us. But we're missing the point of that there is so much more to intelligence
Than just
than organic intelligence,
Yeah.
let's call it that, than artificial intelligence. There's so much more to us than that. And I feel, if I want to look at it as why is this happening for us, I feel like this is here to teach us to be able to channel and intuitively go back to that rather than this like scientific approach to everything, to start switching on to something that is a lot more abundant
Yeah.
and a lot more infinite wisdom than artificial intelligence. So everything's happening for us. Again, if you look at all these big things like AI, like all of these things that people are talking about from that perspective, if you try to go away from the fear and understand why is this happening for us, everything, war, famine, all of these things, the biggest
Yeah.
things that nobody wants to talk about, taboo, just think about them. Allow yourself the moment to think about them. Why is this happening for us? What is there for us to learn from it? How can we evolve consciously? You'll get all these answers. I love this conversation about AI right now. Nobody's having it.
Yeah, it's fear more than anything
Yeah.
that is going around it,
Yes.
rather than any actual real conversations about what is it all about.
Yeah.
But
Fear
it's,
mongering.
yeah. Yeah.
The powers to be love that. They love to make us feel fearful, and
Then we're more manageable.
of course. Yeah.
If you would, oh God, we covered so many things. If you would cover all the conversation that we had, and you would have one key takeaway, or as many as you want actually in this point of time, what would it be?
I think the most important thing I would say from this conversation
Yeah.
is to work constantly on making your unconscious conscious and understand the behaviors, the reactions, the routines, all of that stuff, and then the results of that are happening on an unconscious level. So you're not even thinking about them and they're happening, and you're very reactive, and based on everything we spoke about. How can you make that conscious and actually be aware of them and reprogram them through your actions and understanding and awareness? It happens. You reprogram yourself. How can you actually start living consciously like that? Being conscious and aware of every moment of your life and releasing the need to control everything. That will dramatically, not only will it do these amazing things where it's going to fulfill your spiritual needs and you're going to understand your higher purpose and all of these things we talk about, but quite frankly, it's just going to give you a better quality of life. You're going to be happier, especially if I'm talking from this perspective, but especially if you're a really busy person.
Yeah.
If you're a really busy person, if you're able to be conscious of your tasks, of the things you need to do every day, including your life tasks, you're going to be a healthier parent, a better husband, a better wife, a better colleague, a better boss, a better leader, all of that stuff. Just be conscious of the stuff you're doing unconsciously and keep the stuff that is good, because some of the unconscious stuff is good, but dare to think about how I can do better consciously with the unconscious stuff that's running in the background.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I loved it. It's very broad. We got into very broad topic, but it's very insightful, and it's very actually eye-opening. And I had lots of takeaways for myself.
Cool.
And I felt like this conversation was meant for me, because it was coming
meant
for
for
me
both
lots
of
of
us.
yeah. It was very good for me because there were many answers that I got for myself through whatever you were saying at points of time about things.
We
So-
are a reflection of each other, so it's a mirroring effect.
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody, I'm so conscious of these moments. This moment needed to be, for whatever reason it is, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.